call it? I don't know. Just wanting some burgers.
I know. It's kind of
It's
a
one of
hard
those
day for both of
nights.
us.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, I just want burger up so bad. And so
Burger
we
Up
did it.
is a local burger place that I have in town that we both like. It's pretty good. It's
It was
good.
so good.
Good small business to support.
Yeah.
So, we're going to talk about something, kind of a weird title, but are Jews wealthier than Christians?
Oh, yeah.
Um, and let's see. Let's talk about how we got here. So,
Yeah.
I'm reading this book. See if we can see that. 5 Wealth Secrets. This article, or this book, not article. It's a book for sure. There's a passage in here that just that I read that got me thinking about all this, and then we'll dive in a little bit deeper with all of it. But I think there's a lot of really important lessons for us to learn here as we kind of go through this. Yeah. So I'm going to start reading some of this passage to you, and there's a good amount here that I want to read to you. So bear with me, because I think it's really good, and I think there's some deep wisdom here that
Yeah,
I
let's
just
hear
kind of want to
this.
share from it. So this is actually in the introduction of this book. I'm really only like a chapter or two in. So far, it's good, but
I think this is a marker, not a highlighter.
it gets the job done. So it's a highlighter.
Oops. Okay.
All right. So the author of the book, his name's Craig Hill. Actually met him last
Oh, really?
summer. Yeah, we met him at the CEF thing.
Oh.
Just for a second. Like, I only talked to him for a minute.
Wow.
I didn't even know. And then I came home and I found his book on a shelf that I had bought and hadn't read yet.
Oh, that's cool.
Like, crazy, small world. Anyway, so he has a story
I
in here
guess.
where he goes and talks to his accountant, and I'll just read this. He says, "Tell me
Sure
honestly,
they can hear you.
who is more prosperous? Who has larger financial statements, your Jewish clients or your Christian clients?" And as one might expect, the accountant chuckled and responded, "My Jewish clients, of course, probably about 10 to 1 in magnitude."
So are we talking Jewish, just the race of people, or Jewish, like in the
I don't know.
religious? We
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
Okay.
I don't know. It
All
just
right.
says Jewish clients. I don't really know. And so he says, one more question. Being Jewish yourself, so the accountant being Jewish, being Jewish yourself, what is your personal opinion as to why that is? And this is how the accountant responded. So the accountant mused for a moment and then picked up the Christian Bible, which he had with him, and then said something like the following: "You Christians tend to live out of the back of this book, while we Jews tend to live out of the front of the book. Unfortunately for Christians, most of the financial principles are in the front of the book. So we Jews believe in and abide by these principles, while you Christians seem to ignore them and discount them because they are, quote, Old Testament. However, I believe that the adherence to these principles is what causes people to prosper financially." So that's
Interesting.
that. Yeah, so that's interesting. I'm going to continue because there's some
Okay.
more interesting stuff
Because you
here.
read me that last week, and I feel like I was like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, keep going.
All right. So he said, "I've heard several times from Jewish friends explanations similar to the following. I don't really fully understand your Christian beliefs, but from what I understand, it seems most Christians have the idea that they can violate the basic principles described in the Bible, and then because of the grace of God extended by the sacrifice of Christ, they are forgiven, and therefore everything will be all right. Thus, it seems to me that most Christians feel that they don't have to pay any attention to the financial principles explained in Proverbs or the rest of the Old Testament because these are part of the law. And since Christians are in Christ and no longer under the law, they feel no need to abide by these Old Testament financial principles." All right. So
Is there
one
more?
more
Okay.
section here, and then we'll talk about this a little bit. And so the author, Craig, says this: "My personal observation has been that many evangelical and charismatic Christians like to study the Bible. Many can tell you exactly where in the Bible a particular passage is located and even quote the verse to you. However, frequently, when you have studied the Bible passage, such Christians have in practice violated the life principle contained in the passage. On the other hand, many Jewish people cannot tell you where in the Bible a particular passage is, but because of the culture and the teaching of their family, they inherently practice the principle." And
Does
so,
he have an example of that?
yeah, for example, Proverbs
Great.
22:7 tells us that the borrower is slave to the lender. It may be common in our day for a Jewish banker to be the mortgage holder or lender on the home of a Bible-believing Christian, a borrower who holds a weekly Bible study group in his home regarding biblical principles on finance. The Christian mortgagee can tell you all about where to find the passage in the Bible about debt, while the Jewish banker may not know where in the Bible to find these passages. Yet who is the master and who is the slave? Who is making money and who is spending money? In reality, the Jewish lender has chosen to be the master, while the Christian borrower has chosen to be the slave. So which is better, to study the Bible and not live out the principles contained therein, or to live out the principles and not study the Bible? And the author, Craig, says, I would suggest that we do both, study and live out the principles. So, with that,
Yeah.
so reading that, because this is something I've thought about a decent amount in the past, but I've never thought about it kind of in this context. And it's pretty interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Because in my experience, I feel like I've experienced something similar where where I just feel like I see a lot of Christians who know Bible verses, but who can spout them off, but who aren't living them.
Yeah.
And so I did some research on this just to kind of confirm a little bit of what's talked about here. So Forbes, if you look at the 400 richest, they have the Forbes 400 list of the wealthiest Americans or whatever, or maybe it's the whole world. Anyway, so of the top 100 spots, 30 of them are Jewish people, Jews. And this is interesting too. So less than 0.2% of the world population is actually Jewish. So under 1% is Jewish, but yet 22% of Nobel Prize winners are Jews. Like, that's mind-boggling. I don't know if you've ever taken a statistics class. Like, I took one in high school, and looking at those numbers like that just doesn't make any sense. That there is something going on there. That's not just like random, you know. 11% of the world's billionaires are Jewish. Even though, again, less than 1%, 0.2% of the world is Jewish, and 11% are billionaires. Like, that just doesn't add up.
Yeah.
And 20% of the world's 50 richest people are Jews as well. So these are just the facts of what the numbers are. Yeah. And somebody might be really cynical and just say, well, it's because they're not generous, and we Christians, we give more money away, and that's like not true at all. Like, statistically, Jews give way more than Christians. Like, so that's not the case either. And you know, I would think, and this was based on another book I read, which I have laying around somewhere, something about like the Jewish faith, and there tends to be a stronger adherence to tithing, and I think giving as a whole within the Jewish faith than with Christians. And anyway, so I don't know the answer. I don't know like how all these pieces tie together, but I think there are definitely some things that we can take from this.
Yeah, and it's definitely got us thinking, because kind of where I am with this is true. Like, we no longer gain our salvation. This guy said, Casey says, how do I become Jewish? Seriously. We no longer gain our salvation by following the law.
Yeah.
However, is the idea that this is sparking in me is it just that everything in the Old Testament that we've kind of dismissed as it being Old Testament, exactly what this guy said.
It's the law. We're redeemed
it's
from
the
law.
Yeah. that we don't have to follow it anymore. But could it be that there are just blessings attached to living the way that God asks us to live? For example, like, let's just go back to the basic 10 commandments. Don't steal. There is a blessing attached to not stealing. You're not going to get in trouble. You're not going to need to go to jail if you're not stealing, right? Or,
yeah, and I think the important
murdering,
thing,
or,
Yeah, I think the important thing to
those
mention...
are obvious, right?
They are, but the important thing to mention here is that it's not... on the one hand, you have the forgiveness of sins. You have the grace that is provided to us by Jesus, his righteousness that we have taken on by accepting him. But that doesn't nullify and take away any consequences of negative actions. And so if you violate one of the 10 commandments, it's like, yes, you can ask for forgiveness and be forgiven of that, but there still might be consequences to your actions.
Right.
Like if you murder someone, like you're still going to go
You
to
should
jail.
go to jail.
And you should
Yeah.
go to jail.
Right.
Like, and whatever that thing is. And if you are stealing from people all the time, like you're going to have to look over your shoulder and you're going to have to run and you're going to have to
Right.
deal with that. And so part of this is the wisdom component of just following these things, and not for the sake of earning your salvation or earning righteousness, but like I think God was doing, like with so many things that God does, he's doing two things at one time or multiple positive side effects. And so offer this as a law, but it's actually for your good.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So like another one that we found out about, we have two boys, and he talks about circumcising your children or your boys, on the seventh day, is
Eighth
it?
day.
Eighth day. And come to find out, the eighth day is when vitamin K kicks in their body.
It's scientifically like the best day to do it, in which I love that stuff when science proves the Bible. But that was like, once I discovered that, it's like, oh, how cool is that? That God laid this out, I don't know, back in Leviticus or somewhere, like instructed them to circumcise on the eighth day. And that's what the medical professionals are doing now, because they know that's the day when vitamin K kicks in or whatever, enough to clot the blood or whatever the thing is. Mm-hmm. And anyway, and I think there's just a lot more like that. And there's a couple things that come to mind for us, one being Sabbath. And it's like, so many Christians just ignore the Sabbath. And I understand, again, in no way am I or Linda like suggesting that, all right, let's all go get under the law and just go find our big books of to-dos and do all that.
Yeah.
But to not ask the question, could there be blessings tied to some of these Old Testament principles that a lot of us are not taking as seriously as maybe we should?
Yeah. And for us, this has been, I feel like there's been something brewing already in our hearts about the Sabbath, and like really looking at what that actually used to look like.
Yeah.
And how can we bring that into our life right now? So one of the things we've been talking about that is really hard, that it's one of those things that we're like, is purchasing things on the Sabbath. Like I've heard it. Let's see, what was that book I read? The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, and
Great
he talked
book.
about not buying anything on the Sabbath, and that idea of like trusting God for whatever you need is going to be there the next day, and that giving, like doing our part to give everyone else a break on that day.
Yeah.
Like we can't change society just by, deciding that we think this is a good idea. But if we start doing our part, and if the Christians as a whole start doing this, I don't know what it would look like for the world.
Yeah.
Or it might make it so that they can close at 8 p.m. instead of midnight, or, something. I don't know. It's just an interesting thought. And it's something that I'm kind of like, I don't really know that I want to do this. But at the same time, I hear stuff like this, and it makes me want to not dismiss it so quickly and just be like, well, that was for the Old Testament because that's how society was back then, and it's so different now. Because it's easy to do. It's really easy to do that. And we're not under the law anymore, and, just completely dismiss all that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, another one of these principles is tithing. And this is like such a controversial topic. I've never written about anything that is more controversial than tithing. And this is the exact reason, is that you have people who will say, we are New Testament believers. We do not have to tithe. That was the old covenant, whatever. And then you have New Testament Christians who have done it and who have experienced the blessing from it and who are all for it. Mm-hmm. And it's just this huge, huge debate. And, we fall in the camp of, I agree, we're not under the law. Like, I don't believe that we're cursed if we don't tithe anymore, because Jesus redeemed us from that curse. But at the same time, like, I think that there's a blessing attached to it that was not nullified by the fact that Jesus came.
That's it. The blessing isn't nullified.
Yeah, like it's still there, and like we've experienced that in our lives, and
big time.
I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who have as well. And so, like, it's just another thing where we see this Old Testament principle that God lays out that, again, we're not tied to the law, but there's something else wrapped up inside of it that, I mean, Jesus said that he came to fulfill the law, not to abolish the law, you know? And so
Yeah.
what does that look like? You know, that's the question that, I'm asking right now about a lot of things and really.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you have ever experienced, you know, other than just the sheer fact, which is enough in itself, of being saved from hell. Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So once you realize that you can be saved, sorry,
Drank it
there's
all.
not much, there's not a lot left. But once you realize you can be saved from that, that freedom is just like this weight off your shoulders. But when you start experiencing other freedoms in God, that you're like, this is the opposite of what it should be. I thought this was going to tie me up more, but it's actually giving me more freedom.
Yeah.
Then you start asking the question, well, what else am I missing? Because if this is here, then there's other stuff that's going on. And I think that's where we are right now. Is like, we have honestly been living a really, really blessed life. But Jesus paid way too high of a price for us to sit here and just be like, yep, that's good. Like, there's so much more for us to tap into that we don't even know yet. And yeah, I'm kind of on a quest to take him up on it.
Yeah, there's no limit to how deep we can go with God.
Yeah.
Like the blessings of God that are available to us, there is no limit to what's there. And I feel the same way. Like, I want to hunt that down and chase after it and figure out what those things are.
Yeah.
You know, and by blessing, for anybody who's not sure, like, I'm not talking about just financial blessing. I feel like financial blessing is one of the lower blessings on the rung, on the ladder rungs. There's just so many other important blessings and things that I value so much more than that, you know? Yeah. It's really interesting. So, where do we go from here?
So what's the question again? Are Jews wealthier than Christians? It kind of looks like it.
So somebody mentioned the Jews being God's people. Yeah,
God's
like they absolutely
people.
are. And I just want to keep learning. So like, I got into this whole thing 12 years ago just because I started reading in the book of Proverbs about, really, like, Proverbs just has so much good money wisdom in it, and business wisdom. Now I was just kind of fascinated what it's talking about.
Just lifestyle, I think, too.
Yeah, just a lot of good wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, in a lot of these Proverbs, like, you will see, like, they're strewn within the New Testament as well. Like, the basic idea and principle, like, many of them come out through Jesus' teachings as well. Mm-hmm. So that's a great place to start for anybody who is wanting to dive into more of this. But there's just a lot of power there and a lot of wisdom, wrapped up in that book. And I, like, for years, I did the proverb a day type thing, because it's, you know, 31 books. And so you can just knock one out and spend 5 minutes each night and just read a chapter. And it's really, really great.
Wisdom in your brain. I like that last one. Go to the very bottom. Okay. We show God how much we love him when we obey his commands. It's not out of obligation. It's out of love.
That's good, James. Preach, brother. Mm-hmm. Preach.
That's really good.
So Blue Turtle, I don't know if this guy's still on. He said, "Okay, boomer." I don't know what I was saying at that point. I'm not a boomer, brother, but I wish I knew what you were talking about. All right. Let's see. So that was kind of the thought for today that we wanted to download and dump out on y'all. So
yeah, this is just food for thought. Really, we have no answers here.
Yeah,
we have no final answers. It's just kind of what we've been thinking about and talking about in our house.
Yeah, and so many times I feel like this is how God communicates with me, is by asking me questions. And so I like to ask questions. And, you know, like, some of our well, really most of our courses are not based around this way. Even a couple, most of our articles are very how-to and I try to be to the point, but I also like asking questions and getting people to think. And I think there's, well, just really good things come from that. And so for me, that's how I feel like God communicates with me a lot of times, is by dropping a question in my heart. It's like, what if you did this? I'm like, that's normally my response.
And that's
like,
it. That's all you get.
Are you saying this is what you want me to do, or are you just asking a question? So anyway, I'll keep you guys updated on this book when I finish it. But like I said, so far I'm about 2 or 3 chapters in, and I think it's good. But I'll let you know when I finish it. So, anybody have any questions? Anything you want to talk about?
You have somebody. Oh, go back to the
I'm
comments
trying.
all the way to the top.
Where'd they go?
Where did they just go?
There they are. All the way at the top, up here?
Yeah. Because watching from Nigeria.
Oh, that's cool. Hey,
I don't know how to say your name. I'm going to butcher it, but it looks like Miss Sheila.
MSH. You don't see that in the English language too often. I don't know how to pronounce that.
But that's awesome.
Nancy says, hi, I love your website. Thank you, Nancy. Ian's from Texas. 2 from Texas. Nicole's from Texas.
Yeah.
I love Texas. Great country of Texas. Can I say that? So I drove through West Texas a couple years ago, and
we drove through all of Texas. But
well, we did, but it was a joy of my life driving through West Texas. I know most people are like, "Why the heck would you want to do that?" or "Why would that be a joy?" But
it was the joy.
So my favorite thing about West Texas is I felt like I've never been out in the middle of nowhere.
We were in like it was like a Western movie.
As much as in West Texas. As we're driving, like I felt like we're on these tiny little 2-lane highways. I mean, for miles, everywhere you look, you can see nothing. And we aren't seeing any cars passing on the road anymore. And we had like 15 minutes go by without seeing a car, like coming the opposite way. And I'm like, are we, we probably lost cell service. Like, it's just one of those moments where it's like, we are really out there.
This is like the olden days.
Like if the car broke down,
yeah, we're just sitting here.
We'd really be in trouble right now, But I loved that about it. It was kind of fun. Anyway.
It was 3 years ago.
Was it 3 years ago now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We only had one child at that point.
Texas Hill Country. I don't know where that is, but that sounds good. Yeah. So, all right. Anna says, I want to know about how to start a family trust. I do too, Anna. I'm not the one to help you. But depending on what you're talking about here, I've talked to my accountant a little bit about starting a trust, but I'm not the guy to help you, unfortunately. I wish I knew more, but I don't yet. Once we kind of go through that ourselves, I'll be able to share at least my experience with it, but that's where we are right now. So fun news, I will share this with you guys first because I like you, because you're going there. So we're negotiating right now with a handful of book publishers about our book that's going to be coming out. Well, I shouldn't say soon. It's actually going to be a while. It's probably going to be like a year and a half. That's the way the publishing industry works. But hopefully in the next week or two, we will have some concrete news of a book deal being signed, and
extremely exciting.
We're getting pretty pumped about that. And I can't really reveal many more details about it at this point, but we're excited. It's going to be fun. All right. Let's go back up here real quick. What do we got? All right. James said, thanks for your budgeting course, taking it now. Thank you for taking it, James. Glad to have you. Oh, by the way, James, James is talking about a real money budgeting course, which we are going to be launching the 2.0 version of that in about 2 weeks, James, and you are going to be upgraded with all the new and additional content, just so you know. So it'll be grandfathered into all that, which will be coming out probably in about 2 weeks or so. So stay tuned for that.
It's going to be awesome.
All right. Kerrville or Fredericksburg, Texas. All right, Ann.
All right.
We'll come visit.
Can you imagine? You wake up in the morning, we're like...
Hi, Ann. It's us. We're here. Hope you have a spare bedroom. Oh, and here's our 3 kids. They like peanut butter and jelly.
The middle one screams a little bit, but it's fine.
Yeah.
You'll be fine.
Yeah, and we'll just drop them off, and we'll say, "Hey, see, Ann, we're gonna go on a
go
date.
on a date. See
We
ya."
need a date, Ann." Yeah.
Man.
All right. Michelia asks a really difficult question that let's talk about. So yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like, okay, so Michelia, if I'm saying it right, says, if you like to keep the Sabbath law, what day should you go for as a Christian? The real Sabbath is on Saturday. How do you reconcile that? So yeah, this is interesting. Most of the Christian church has chosen to make Sabbath Sunday, and then yeah, like the real day is Saturday. Yeah, I honestly, Linda's gonna fall asleep on us over here. She's had a busy day momming. Anyway, yeah, like this has been a tricky thing. Like we've
actually talked about this recently.
Yeah,
because you've had a lot of people talk to you about this, right?
Because like we've mentioned the Sabbath on a few videos, and there's like 1,000 comments of people saying real Sabbath on Saturday. Because I said we observe the Sabbath on Sunday. And like I understand that, and I'm not saying that Sunday is the day to do it. I'm saying for us at this point, like we've chosen to do Sunday, but like we might start doing Saturday as we are like just kind of thinking through this all a little bit and trying to, And again, like I want to make sure we're not doing this out of pressure or obligation. Like I definitely don't do it because commenters are telling me to do it, but if we determine that, because there's a biblical precedent for it being on Saturday. Like I understand that, but like what we're trying to figure out is where is the line between getting too much in the weeds of the specifics of the law.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
And this is where it's like a little bit tricky for me anyway. I don't know.
I think this is kind of the journey we're on too. It's like,
yeah,
for a long time it was just like we'll just do whatever we want.
Well, for a long time it was no Sabbath at all. It's like,
yeah,
I'm not going to do a Sabbath. I'm a New Testament Christian. I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
And then we decided, all right, let's start practicing this. We saw a blessing attached to that. It makes sense. We're so much healthier because of it on a whole bunch of levels.
It fell on Sunday because it just did.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what the culture tells us right now, right? Like, if you're going to have a Sabbath, it's on Sunday.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we are. But we're hearing this. And again, it's like, I'm feeling the same way. It's like, well, if God set it up that way, there must be a reason.
Yeah.
And yeah, these are all questions we're asking.
So, yeah,
I think it's a great question.
So to be honest, where I think we will ultimately land is I think we will be doing it on Saturday.
Think so too.
I think that's where we're going to land in this. But as with so many things, like we've talked about a lot on just this video here, not being confined to the law and being under the law. Like there are a lot of Christians who that's how they operate, and everything is out of a judgmental and Pharisaical approach to putting everyone under the law. And so like I strongly resist that. Mm-hmm. And and there's a lot of things that and so that's part of just working through all this just for us. We're just talking all about our situation here, and
I think we can all appreciate like we are all works in progress.
Yeah. Like we don't have this figured out. Like
we don't.
We're on a journey.
Yeah, I mean, we are the same as you. We just happen to be talking more publicly about.
We have the luxury of not being your pastor and not having to have this figured out, and so we can just talk honestly about here's where we are,
and just love us because we're in the same, not the same boat as you, but at the same boat as you in that we're not done yet. Like we're not perfected yet. We're not walking in the perfection that we will be, and when we get to heaven. So we're kind of stumbling through this, but.
Yeah, so all that.
You have wisdom. Like somebody just said, James just said, ask the Holy Spirit to confirm. I just started taking my Sabbaths on Saturdays. I'd love to hear like more about that. Like I think that that's so cool. And I'm curious for anybody who's been like, who has done this, what are the benefits you're seeing too? Like that's another thing that I'm really interested in because I think what you're saying is there's people that are just like, well, that's what you're supposed to do, so you better do it. And I don't
Well, and normally
I don't see that coming under the grace of what Jesus has done for us at
yeah,
all. And
yeah.
I think that's probably what you're referring to, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and normally, this is random observation I've noticed. People when they have, it's very rare when you have someone who can give constructive criticism as a commenter or emailing, who can do it in love, like, which
Yeah.
is mind blowing, mind blowing. Like, we've gotten so many comments and whatever. It's like, if you were a real Christian, you would on Saturday, like, you're not a real Christian, or whatever the thing may be. It's like, you are on the path to hell because you are observing the Sabbath on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, take a chill pill, man. Like, let's talk in love. Like, I really would like to learn. I want to grow in this,
Yeah.
but like, let's wrap it up in some love, please. Anyway.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So yeah, thank you all. Continue to share. If anybody has articles to read, like, I'd
Yeah.
love to read any articles you have. And yeah. All right, Anna has a good thing here.
Go ahead.
So Anna, okay. So Anna, so you're a Jew, I'm assuming. You say my rabbi. Wait, holds a Bible study on Friday evenings. Okay, covers the Torah, Old Testament. Okay, well, I guess you're not a. I'm confused, Anna. Tell me more about your situation. Yep. So yeah, two books that have helped us a lot with this. The Rest of God, Mark Buchanan, recommended that book probably more than any other book in my life, which is a great book that helped us both grow and understand Sabbath and what it actually means and
Looks
can
like
be,
it,
and really, really good. And then The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which you mentioned.
Yeah, I
Somebody else on
mentioned.
here mentioned.
So he said something about like the Sabbath is just for resting and enjoying God's creation. That's how he said it. And I think in the other one,
Rest of God.
The Rest of God, he talked about it should feel like you're playing hooky.
Yeah.
So that was what we took originally, where it was like, let's go play hooky. Like, what does that look like? A picnic? Go get dinner?
Yeah, and I think the point was restoring your soul. Like, I think you could take that a little bit too far and turn that just into self-indulgent type thing.
Yes, which I think I was tending towards that a little bit, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. And
Which
again, the
is that
journey
thing about,
component
like,
of this, I think that's still better than workaholism that most of us tend to. And even those who aren't working 7 days a week, like, workaholism bleeds into, or at least for me, it bleeds into a big long to-do list every single day, Saturday and Sunday included, where all day long I'm doing this and doing this and doing this and all these things I have to do nonstop. Whereas the Sabbath component is, what does it look like to trust God for this stuff to get done, even if I'm not doing it today? Out of faith, I'm going to not do this thing today. And can I trust God enough that he's going to take care of it?
Yeah.
And that was a big thing for me. That was a big area of growth for me.
And somebody said something on here about, like, women having babies. They're just supposed to not have babies on, a certain day so that those doctors and nurses don't have to work. Obviously, well, I don't know if it's obvious or not, but I'm not talking about that. I think that there are some things that, it's like, there's got to be doctors that are able to do that. And also, it's like, the church, like the pastors, and some people have services on Saturday. They definitely are having services on Sundays.
I mean, and I think that falls into one of those categories of religious, pharisaical kind of approach.
Yeah.
Where what was Jesus talking about? If your donkey falls in a pit on Sabbath, like, do you not go and rescue him? Whatever the thing, and like, if you're using the Sabbath as an excuse to not help someone or something, like, I can easily see how that becomes that's a religious approach that, anyway, we'll be done. So this has been a long,
see if there's any other
meandering
messages.
kind of thing that we got going on here. We've got a lot more messages here. Okay. Yeah, Gene said Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath.
Exactly.
Another thing Jesus said. Truth without love is a weapon. Boom. That's a truth bomb there. All right, this is what Anna says. Do you want to read what Anna says?
The benefits are more peace, a richer walk with God. The treasures are unbelievable. It also helps you to appreciate the Jewish side of Jesus. Oh, I like that. I have worshipped with Messianic Jews for many years. I don't have a confirmed Jewish lineage. Regardless, it's an amazing experience with Yeshua. You learn to honor, praise the King of the universe. I love that. I do feel like so much of that, like, I just started doing a little, what's it called? Study on, I was like looking up the names of God. And so I started looking up El Shaddai to just get more information on that. And there's so many of those, of God's names that we don't think about or dwell on because it's in the Old Testament. And it's like, I feel like we're missing a huge component of who he is.
Yeah.
Like we don't know who he is. And so I love that, Anna, that you're talking about that.
Yeah. All right, Jamal says the benefits my wife and I have seen have ranged from freedom from work to making more money when we rested. We've been able to grow closer together into the Father since we started.
I love that.
So that is another, and again, like this falls into the category of don't make this your motivation, but like we have had that happen. Like we have taken single month-long sabbaticals where we actually earned more from me not working the entire time. Like, what the heck? How is that even possible?
It kind of makes you feel bad a little bit. Like, you're like, wow, the business doesn't really need me.
I know.
Except for the fact that it's not that. Like, it is. Yeah. It's just a blessing of the Lord.
But it came at a time where it was God just trying to prove to me, you are not as important as you think you are in this equation. And just humbling me a little bit. And that was pretty humbling,
James.
Shane says, I strive to use it as disconnecting from the world and its systems.
Yeah.
Yeah. James says, we are the church as the followers of Jesus. Great. Yep.
Listen to the blowing of the shofar on YouTube on the Sabbath. You'll enjoy the sound. It also helps with spiritual warfare.
So, James, we used to have somebody at our church, Jewish believer, who I don't know what day of the year it was. Do you know when it was? You might know, James, when it is, but once a year, he'd come up on stage and blow the shofar.
It was actually my dad that would blow the shofar.
Your dad was the one who did it?
Yeah.
Wow. Her dad was a music teacher.
My dad.
That's right. Your dad did do it.
Because he didn't know. Well, I think Mr. Citron did it for a while, but he wasn't that good at it. But my dad's like a horn player, so he had him do it.
He's a master's degree in bass trombone.
It was so powerful, honestly, when he did do it. It was like, oh my gosh, why is this holy? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't make sense.
It's a weird looking trumpet you got up there.
Oh man, this is so cool. I love this conversation. Thanks guys for chatting with us about this and for sharing your wisdom with us in such a loving way, because I feel like that's what we're just all striving to learn more. Like, I want to know God as well as I can on the earth. Obviously, there's always going to be a veil, but yeah, I'm loving this.
Yeah. All right, we're going to call the night. Appreciate you all.
Yeah.
We'll see you next Tuesday as well. And I think that's all for now. Good hanging out with you all, and we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.